Hi everyone, Comic Reviewer here. This time reviewing on the 2018 film Peter Rabbit. Now, Peter Rabbit, the 2018 film, is a live-action computer animated comedy film that is meant to be based on the popular character from the book series of Beatrix Potter. Now, Beatrix Potter was a famous writer who is known for writing the iconic character Peter Rabbit and other characters from her sort of titles, which had The Tale of Pie and the Patty Pan, also The Tale of Mr. Jeremy Fisher, and also the story of Miss Moppet. And the stories would always have a premise where a character would basically go through an experience and would always have a message or a moral to the story, such as Jemima Puddle Duck, message about not being fooled or deceived, Peter Rabbit about not going in somewhere without permission, and so on. So the premise of the film is meant to follow Peter and his siblings, who, after escaping Mr. McGregor's garden, we see how Peter goes back to retrieve his jacket, only to something that happens to Mr. McGregor, which leads to the rabbits having an all-out party at his house. And we kind of see how Thomas McGregor, who is meant to be Mr. McGregor's great-nephew, decides to kind of come to the house after getting word of what happened to Mr. McGregor, and plans to sell it to start his own toy business to get back Harrods. Now, Thomas's character, I would say, is meant to be a counterpart to Mr. McGregor. Well, he is meant to be controlling, arrogant, hypocritical, and so on, they actually do show that he's not really a bad guy. He does have second thoughts in his actions. He does kind of question if he is doing the right thing. And I think the writers really do show it that he's not really a bad person. He just wants to kind of be approved and accepted. And it's kind of implied the reason why he was passed over at his job was not only to give it to another person, but because of his controlling behaviour. And we kind of see how Thomas kind of gets roped into the rabbit's friend Bee, who is played by Rose Byrne. Now, Bee's character is actually meant to be a friend to the rabbit. She's meant to be sort of trying to get people to see that animals are people too, and does kind of put things to hard standards. But we kind of see how Thomas and them do get to know each other, and we kind of see how Thomas does kind of put on a fake mask to feel wanted and accepted. But we kind of see over time he starts to kind of accept Bee's world and gets amazed by her. But of course, this kind of causes Peter to feel jealous in not losing another person he cares about from her. And this leads out to an all-out Tom and Jerry war. And I think for the most part, I would say Peter Rabbit has a bit of a message. I think with Peter's story, it's more about accepting and moving on from things and letting people be with where they want to be with someone. And I think the point of Thomas's story is about being honest to yourself, coming to terms with who you are, and not trying to be something you're not. And I think for the most part they really do hammer the topic well. Like, you can kind of tell they're not really bad people. They do want to believe what they're doing is right. And they do kind of hammer the sort of redemption story well. We kind of see how Benjamin is a little more realistic with Peter's plan. Like, he does seem to have more sort of trying to get him to see sense. And when things do go wrong, they do show he's not easily going to forgive Peter, but decides to come back to help him fix his mistakes. That is a perfect way of showing a redemption story. And I think, for the most part, I think with the other rabbits they do well with. Like, you kind of got Flopsy, who's meant to have a bit of a lisp, but is this kind of a bit in the sidelines. Mopsy, who is kind of meant to be in the sidelines as well, but tries to make up that she's the oldest. And we kind of see how Cottontail is just the one being more in the sidelines. but I think they still work as characters. And I think for the most part, seeing the other characters from Beatrix Potter's book, like Mr. Todd, Piglin Bland, and also Jemima Puddle Duck, does work. And I like how they still keep the character designs close to the books, and don't give them things like hoodies or basically modern t-shirts. It's just them paying respect to the more classical era. And I do think when you have Sam Neill for Mr. McGregor at the start, they do really get his character right, as the point of Mr. McGregor is meant to be an intimidating force to Peter Rabbit and his arch nemesis. I think the point of Tom is meant to be a similar counterpart, but not really to the full extent like his great uncle. He does show signs that he isn't a bad person, but just wants people's approval and all that. Much like Chloe from Miraculous Ladybug, Casey Krinsky from DC Superhero Girls, as well as the Cable Guy from The Cable Guy. And I think this movie definitely deserves a thumbs up. It's still good and still alright. So, Comic Reviewer here, signing out.